All right. Excited to be with you. My voice may sound a little raspy. That's not, me trying to, sound like a blues singer. It's just that I got a little cold, but we all go through things, and we are here to empower children as we help them to overcome ADHD. I'm AJ McMahon. I'm excited to be back with you. Please check out the description for notes on today's message, which will be we'll talk about the rule of threes, or basically how to use threes to your advantage. So we're going to talk about threes today. Yes, lots of threes. You can check out the previous videos in this series. This is a six-part series on practical wisdom for overcoming medium challenges. And you can extrapolate to the more severe challenges or the not medium challenges for children 12 and under, and sometimes maybe even extrapolate to if they're a little bit older than 12, using your wisdom and also developmental information about how the changes, not just with them going through developmental changes with puberty, but also being able to look at the changes in the brain that happen somewhere around 13, 14, 15-ish, when children go from concrete thinking to abstract thinking, when they start contemplating the meaning of life and all kinds of other things that they never really kind of thought about before, and how we want to operate differently to meet them developmentally where we are. Now, we're talking about practical wisdom, and the roadblock can be that we see practical wisdom for those kids, not our kids, because our kids have, we have been led to believe they have a condition, or that what we might do might hurt the relationship, or there's some kind of barrier to this practical wisdom. That wisdom is great for those children, but not for my child. That my child is in a place now with psychotropics, prescription psychotropics for ADHD. They're doing better. We're doing great. We're good, AJ. Pass that on to somebody else. This is for almost all children, because the reality is, the accurate info which we talk about is that children are meant, are built, are designed, regardless of what you've been told, regardless of what you've seen. The reality is children are designed to overcome these challenges. And most can, almost all can, when we have the accurate information, when we put together an effective plan and we empower them accordingly. And why is that important? Because we want to empower our children, not let the world dictate what they can and can't do. What the psychotropics are effective psychotropic. When I say psychotropic drugs, that's synonymous. Most people call it medication, but the reality from the accurate information is that they are drugs. Now, drugs not as in good or bad. We're not here making a judgment. We're talking about what they are and how they function in reality. And in reality, it can be very effective in symptom management, but they do not have the power to help your child to build skills. Now, with the overarching belief that the child is not capable because of brain uh, functions or divergencies, none of that is really substantiated by actual research. Now, many people will say, well, AJ, the research says this and the research says that. But here's the challenge. Here's what I find. The two challenges I find are when I ask people, well, what research have you seen? There can be a struggle. And even when people find research, it's usually something that they've looked up, that's one article. But when we take a deeper dive, when we're able to look at the actual research, we're able to read it. And part of the practical wisdom, when for those of you who want to do some research, here's the practical research wisdom for that. Till we get into the rule of threes. Well, let me do a rule of threes with the research. This is going to be off the cup. Rule one: when someone says the research says, ask them what research. Or when you read something and it points to research, then find specifically what research they are indicating. If they can't produce the research, then I would encourage some healthy skepticism. Rule two: when the research is presented, I want to encourage you to look at the actual research yourself. Is this article that has a summary, people's opinions, or was there some type of research study? And I put that in air quotes because in wisdom, we've got to be careful with any type of research, right? We got to try to see what's being presented, what are the circumstances and conditions, and, be able to look for the validity in the research. Okay. So in this rule number 2, what I encourage you to do when you find that research, read the introduction. Okay. They can be lengthy, I know this, but at least thoroughly pay attention to the introduction. And then even if you don't read the whole article, now I'm not encouraging you to skim because this is not going to be profitable. But when you put your energy into paying attention to the research, do the introduction and the summary at the end or the conclusion at the end. Really pay attention to what's presented, what's being shared, and how it's worded. Because a lot of times it's very interesting as we get to see that there's a lot of speculation, maybes, probablys, but nothing really verified, right? But see for yourself. Rule 3, find a second source a second validated source that substantiates what you're finding. Find at least 2 sources. So rule 3 is find 2. Okay. So rule 1, ask what is the research. Rule 2, pay attention and try to study a little bit, just the introduction and the conclusion at least, and really see what it indicates, what it reads. Rule 3, find a second source to substantiate that information. I've done this so many times, okay? And I'm not telling you things that you can't do for yourself. That's the thing. That's why we're at the power of able, because you are able to see these things for yourself. And the value, the life adjustments, the overall gains, the hope that can be found in being able to see what's really there can be life and legacy altering. So I encourage you to do that with the research. Now we're going to dive into the practical wisdom today when it comes to your journey, your plan to empower your child to overcome the challenges that they're facing. Whether you're a parent, a professional, a caregiver, however you're invested in the life, we're in this series of practical wisdom. We're doing series because I believe in what I've seen, if you take this information and you just try to apply it without an overall plan, oftentimes it's not going to get you home. You're going to end up frustrated back where you started or worse. And that's why we believe often that we're not able, or a child's not able, because we have, as I've titled my books, which you can find on Amazon under my name, AJ McMahon, McMahon. The books are titled, I've Tried Everything and Nothing Works, because that's the cry of caregivers. So in order to empower you, I want to encourage you to use this practical wisdom as a part of your overall plan. So we're going to talk about the rule of 3, or the 3 rules today. The first one actually is, when you are constructing a plan to empower your child, okay, break what you are structuring down into no more than 3 rules. Okay, let me give you an example. Let's say that you want to use timeout and you're trying to set guidelines for timeout. You want to set guidelines that can encompass everything that you hope in 3 or less specific rules. So let's say your child, you try to put your child in timeout. Let's say that you do a traditional timeout and you have them sit in a quiet place. And what will they do? They'll get up, they'll run around, they'll scream, they'll call your name. What else? What else can you think of, right? You can think of things, and maybe you can list in the comments the things that children will do when it comes to timeout that can defeat the purpose. So what would you say are 3 or less specific rules or guidelines that basically cover what you need in order to make timeout effective. They can be something like your your bottom has to stay in the seat, or if they're sitting like, comfortably on the ground, your bottom has to stay on the ground. Why? Because we can say, sit still, don't get up, all these kind of things, right? But when we have an effective rule like your bottom must stay on the ground or will stay on the ground until your time is over as one of the rules, well, that eliminates bouncing, jumping, getting up, running around, right? So one rule takes care of a lot of things. You might now you might have another. Let me try to think of another example. Um, hmm. And you can use your wisdom, when it comes to this. So let me think of another example. Okay, they might. What do you think? Child might try to throw things. Um, they might. Here's one that's really tough: is when our children. What do we do when our children uh, are yelling or making sounds? Or something like that. We got to be careful, where when we try to tell a child to absolutely be quiet, right? We're really telling them to not really kind of do, they could cry, right? That's not really quiet. They could yell, they could scream, they could talk a little bit, they could mumble to themselves. When we say be quiet, or sit quietly, that can be very challenging because now you have to try to count every noise there is. Where you might think of a rule like, um, no screaming. Okay. Now you definitely have to work on that. And the trick is you want to make sure that whatever rule you can set, it probably needs to be more specific. So actually, I'm not going to encourage a rule like no screaming. It might be you can only talk to yourself until time. You can only talk to yourself till time is over. Or it might be that you actually let them know that no talking is allowed, or no talking is allowed. Now, when you say no talking, that means if they're saying words like if they're saying mommy or something like that. Now you might say, well, AJ, they're screaming or something like that. But here's, as you've kind of seen me try to puzzle through this a little bit and have a challenge, that's because the challenge is real when it comes to noises and things like that. So you want to find something specific that you can actually measure. Like you can say to your child, no uh, no talking, no words. So if they're whining a little bit, whimpering, screaming, maybe you have to let that go for now until you can get and kind of build up to a place where you can account for that, right? We don't need to necessarily get them to tackle everything all at once. But think of the major win when your child is sitting in timeout and not getting up. Yeah, they may be screaming, they may be whimpering or something like that, but that can be a major win to take that first step. So think of specific practical rules like your bottom will stay on the seat or on the floor. You will not talk, so that if they're crying, whimpering, you can kind of let that go. But any talking is a violation. And don't get up until I come and talk to you, something like that. Have a rule at the end where they know when timeout's going to be over, that it's not over until basically you have this conversation. Now, you can set a time. If you do set a time, that's fine, but make sure you're honoring your time, as far as that goes. And think about how to be wise about a time you set. Some people do like a timer, which can be helpful. Other people may not need that. But the important thing is that whatever time that you feel is reasonable for your child. Okay. So think about a time that's reasonable and you can build up time. Some people might start with something like a minute. I know they say 1 minute per age, but sometimes when you're just starting out with timeout, you want to lower the time because basically the bottom line is any violation of the rules means that the time starts over. So it's okay in the beginning to lower your time while you're emphasizing and reinforcing the 1 to 3 specific rules that empower your child to meet your expectations when it comes to timeout. Okay. So rule number two, the rule number 2 of 3. Anyway, you get where I'm coming from. But here's the second thing we're going to talk about when we're talking about rule of 3s. All right. A lot of people will count to 3, and you've seen it. Maybe you've done it. Not try to call you out here. But if you're going to count to 3, commit to counting to 3. Do it rhythmically. Do it every time the same way with consistency. Why? So your child knows that you mean business. Your child understands what that is. And ultimately, as you empower your child through a plan, you'll start to be able to see the fruit of your labor where your child starts to move on 1 or really move on 2, and you really can be empowered in that. So don't give the chances of the 2. Come on now. Do what I told you to do. No. If you're going to do the count to 3, excuse me, got a call. All right. Thank you for that. A little bit of cold still here with you. But if you're going to do 3, it's 1, 2, 3. Rhythmically every time. Why? Because this rule is going to go into the third rule, and that's act on 3. Okay, listen. Whether you're counting to 3, your children need to learn that you mean business, that you're going to act on 3. This can be if you choose to count to 3, meaning that 3, there's no, okay, now I'm going to go and do it or run. No, when you hit 3, what is your plan to hold them accountable? When you hit 3 rhythmically, you must hold your child accountable. This also goes for when you tell your child to do something. Again, parenting is what? A loving dictatorship. It's not a democracy. It is a loving dictatorship as we're empowering our children. Okay. So in this loving dictatorship, now don't take this the wrong way. We're not talking about holding power over our children. We're talking about empowering them with structure and an understanding that we are the loving authorities in their life that pour our energy into guiding them and nurturing them. This does not hurt their relationship. This does not crush their spirit. We are their friends, but first we must prioritize being their parent and giving them what they need. And so what we do is that we act on 3. When you tell your child to do something, here's how it goes. Johnny, go pick up your shoes. Johnny, what did I tell you to do? And then on 3, you act. So here's the prompt. So you can say it twice. Johnny, go pick up your shoes. Johnny, go pick up your shoes. By the 3rd time, you act. Now, the 3rd time, now what am I saying here? There's really kind of no 3rd time of saying something. That's not what I mean. It means by you've told them what to do, making sure that they've heard you. Doesn't mean they always have to look at you or face you, but you're in your wisdom or making sure you're communicating in a way that you know your child heard you. So you're taking that extra step, that extra notice, that extra attention to make sure you're communicating in a way. You don't have to face them. You can tell kind of the sphere, or you can learn the sphere of your child being able to hear you or what you need to do to get enough attention to be able to pass that what you're telling them across. That's all you need. So when you tell your child to do something, the first time you give them that polite command, Johnny, go tie your shoes, or Johnny, please go tie your shoes. A lot of times we're asking, that's for another video. I know it's polite, but really, you really just want to encourage them, tell them what you need them to do. Johnny, go get your shoes, please. Second time, Johnny, go put on your shoes. And then in a reasonable amount of time, don't drag this out. Don't yell. Don't go to all these different things. Didn't you hear me? All this stuff. Reasonable amount of time between that second time that you've communicated. If your child is not doing what you told them to do, you must act. This is the time to hold them accountable. Going back to the leap steps: love, expectation of excellence, affirming accountability, and perseverance. And in this step, this is the affirming accountability. Johnny, I know you can do what I tell you, but you didn't this time. So I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to take something that's important in your life and apply it to this thing that's important for your life. I'm always going to act on three. Not that you're going to tell Johnny that, but you're going to show Johnny that in your patterns, your processes. Make sure your patterns and processes are effective. First rule of three is no more rules than three. Whatever you're trying to structure, think of the 1 to 3 rules that will accomplish the task. You're going on a drive and you need your children to not fight. What are the 1 to 3 specific rules that you can give that can take care of or eliminate the or cover the problems? When you're talking about counting to three, make sure you do it consistently, rhythmically, and always just go ahead and count to three, because on three you act. Doesn't mean that they move on three. When you get to three, have a plan for how to hold them accountable. We always want to hold our children accountable on three. So the third rule of three is that when you tell them something, act on three. Tell them what you want them to do. Make sure you reinforce that by saying it a second time. And then in that reasonable rhythmic amount of time, if your child hasn't really moved, hasn't really met that expectation with excellence, hold them accountable. Okay. I hope these rules can help as part of a overall plan to guide you to empower your child. As we continue this series, stay tuned for the last part of this series, part 6, which we're going to do in about 2 weeks. Again, I strive to be able to offer some content in about a 2-week period. So stay tuned, stay connected, stay involved as we empower your child, those children, any child, to overcome the challenges, overcome ADHD. To read this medical disclaimer as we are finishing up. Okay. All right. So this information is for, or this information, forgive me, is for informational purposes only, is not provided as a substitute for professional medical advice. Um, do not use this information to disregard what you have received from a qualified healthcare professional, and do not delay or disregard any treatment in order to accomplish this information. Bottom line, we're here together. Let's continue this journey to empower your child. We'll see you next time.